Thank you very much, Ms. Williams, for that introduction. It's always hard to come after Dr. Henry. I almost asked Francesco to give these remarks this morning because I'm kind of double booked, but because this particular program is so important to the Inter-American Development Bank and the work we do in Jamaica, I really wanted to be here. So first of all, I want to say thank you for this partnership. We've been working with you in Jamaica for 50 years, but we've been working on these particular issues of community development. And I want to say community development is a term that I like the way you put it, but really we see it as the heart of nation building, the heart of what makes a society in Jamaica. Then we can think a little bit more profoundly about how important communities are in the countries in which we serve, and certainly in the ones in which I serve. I want to welcome everyone here and thank the PIOJ for making this opportunity possible, and share just a couple of perspectives we have on the work we've been doing for the last 20 years or more in this particular area. I want to pick up on Ms. Williams' remark about how competitive Jamaicans are and being first to the race, because something resonated with me, something I was reading on the screen in my office this week, and there was an interview with Tim Donahue, who's the new CEO of Nike. And underneath the tagline that was running at the bottom of his interview was servant leadership. Now, for those of you who know anything about agile methodology and moving to an agile institution, what's at the bottom of it is something called servant leadership. And of course, those of you who come from a more faith-based background know exactly what that means. But in the context of a big capitalist company like Nike, you don't think that that would be associated with their message. But one thing struck me that was very profound, which was this. He said that Nike looks at every human being, imagine this, every human being as an athlete. And that changed the mindset for me immediately, because I like to think of myself as an athlete. I'm not an athlete. I play tennis a few times a week, but I'm not really an athlete, but I like Nike products. Imagine if every Jamaican could wake up and imagine themselves as either a Usain Bolt or a Shelley Ann Fraser-Price, or a Butch Stewart or a Glenn Christian, right? I think that's how we need to change the mindset around the people we serve in what we call community development. It's what's the vision for the people we're working with in these areas? And I think that's a very, very, to me, this thing I saw watching Tim Donahue mention this just changed my perspective a lot. I like the theme of this year's symposium, and I want to comment on two aspects of it, which one is the evaluation piece and the other one is the collaboration piece. Right now in Jamaica, there's a huge debate, and everyone in this room must know, about whether or not what we're doing with community development, particularly with our Citizen Security and Justice Program, what's really the impact of it? Can we measure what we've been doing, and can we say that the 20 years of investment, and by the way, it has come at a big price tag. This last phase of CSJP is, what, $50 million alone. The question is, are we getting any results from that? Because if you look at Jamaica's homicide rate, it's still one of the highest in the world. I think it's number 4 now, which is not a ranking to be proud of. But it's a stubborn figure, meaning it's very, very difficult to move to a lower number, even though we are working very, very hard in many communities, and in this project in particular, over 50 communities, helping the people we think are most at risk for criminal behavior. It's a very difficult question to answer, but I know, and we have some numbers, and I'm going to share with you some numbers, that this is very important, critical work that cannot be looked at in isolation. And I like to think of it as we're in the business of crime prevention. The police and the Ministry of Justice and National Security are in the business of crime solution and crime suppression, right? And if you look at these two things as being on one spectrum, suppression on one hand and prevention on the other hand, if we can somehow get to somewhere in the middle, maybe we have the right approach. So how do we define impact? The IDB has been doing this for a long time. We have results from all over Latin America and the Caribbean about our work. In Colombia, if you think about Colombia, anybody who would have thought about Colombia even 10 years ago would not have imagined that a city like Medellin, which is that had like a homicide rate, many multiples of Jamaica's, would today be on everybody's must-visit tourist city. Now, how does Medellin move from being one of the top murder capitals in the world to being one of the most attractive places to visit? So there's a lot of work that went on with crime and violence and working with communities to get those communities to change. So I want to say that there is a lot of hope. In Honduras, homicides have been reduced by 50% in the last 7 years. In Trinidad and Tobago, crime has been reduced by 45%, these kinds of programs. With the executing agency we're working with in our project, we know from many evaluations that there's an impact on the at-risk youth that we're working with. Moving from the initial start of the CSJ program to the third phase, we took a different approach based on a lot of ongoing monitoring that we were doing, and also with a lot of encouragement from the partners in the project with us, the Canadians and the British, to move to a case management approach where rather than looking at every single young person at risk as being the same, maybe we need to evaluate them, figure out what's going on with this individual. And the early results we have are that almost 60% of the program participants who were in a high-risk category, meaning these are the most probable category of person to commit a crime and to commit a serious crime, having participated in our programs, they've moved down to a medium risk. That's a huge difference, because someone being at high risk, more prone to pick up a knife or pick up a gun or murder or maim or hurt, is now moved into another category where maybe that same outcome is not possible. We've evaluated over 800 young people using the case management system. What we see is that this impact is worth more investment in. Those who start out at the middle tend to be more stubborn to stay at a medium risk, to come down to a lower risk that takes more work. But we're looking at approaches to figure out why that is and what we can be doing better. Crime and violence in Jamaica is not a problem that's easily solved by just one or two or three or five different approaches. Crime and violence worldwide is being looked at as a disease, and I think we need to look at what's causing crime, how we diagnose it, to make sure that we have the right approaches. I want to give you some data on the participants in the program from 2018 and 2019, just to give you a scale. Over 600 parents improved their parenting skills in the parenting program working through a CSJB project. Why is this important? Corporal punishment is still legal in Jamaica, and it seems like a badge of honor if you as a parent beat your kids. We know from other studies that kids who are beaten as kids turn out to be beaters as adults and also have more violence in their lives, and they're more at risk for criminal behavior. Visiting a Trenchtown community last week, this is kind of funny, but it's not funny. One of the parenting mentors was introduced as someone who was beating her husband and almost killed her daughter. And she's now one of the most senior parenting mentors working with the Parenting Commission of Jamaica. This is a real problem in Jamaica. If kids aren't safe at home, they're not going to feel safe at school, and they're not going to feel safe in their communities. So putting emphasis on parenting and improving parenting skills is really important. We have now trained 63 parent trainers, just so far this year and last year. 432 substance abuse beneficiaries received counseling and treatment. Over 2,000 students participated in the school suspension intervention program. 519 high-risk youth were engaged in positive mainstream activities. Close to 2,000 young persons benefited from vocational skills training. 58 tertiary scholarships have been granted in the past 2 years, and an additional almost 300 students were supported for the academic year 2018-19. 720 participants benefited from pre-vocational remedial education. Many of you in this room may not know the statistic, but of all the children graduating from high school in Jamaica every year, only 30% have enough qualifications to move on to a tertiary level institution. Of that 30% who are left behind, many are leaving high school illiterate and illiterate. So imagine the impact on productivity and the labor force with that. Time's up, she's saying. I can go on about how important this work is, and I want to emphasize something that Dr. Henry said. The psychologists, the social workers, the teachers, the drug treatment personnel, community development officers who work in this field, most of the people in this room, are not the heroes and the heroines we hear about in Jamaica. I want to congratulate you for the work that you do, because every time I participate in one of these events, I come away transformed as an individual and with a lot of respect for the work that you do. This is really hard work. This is the work that's going to transform Jamaica, and I want to encourage you to continue doing what you do. I want to say to the government of Jamaica and all of our partners, the IDB is very committed not only to getting the best results, but to making sure that you have access to the best information, the best practices, the best examples of how we can transform lives in this extremely complex area. Jamaica cannot be what Dr. Henry described at the end, the place to do, where? Work, live, raise families, die in peace. Unless we do this together, and that's my last point on collaboration. We can't do this alone. We can only do this better when we collaborate. Thank you very much.